What happened last night on Jimmy Kimmel Live wasn't just television. It was a moment of truth that millions of Americans have been waiting for. Karoline Leavitt didn't just show up. She stood tall, spoke with conviction, and left Jimmy Kimmel scrambling in front of a stunned audience. It wasn't comedy, it was clarity. And for anyone who's grown tired of media spin and political showmanship, this was a breath of fresh air. This wasn't about right or left. It was about standing up for what's right. If you've lived through decades of political promises and public letdowns, this moment might just restore a bit of your faith in real dialogue and accountability. Before we jump into every powerful second of this epic exchange, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss stories that still speak the truth. The lights in the studio were bright. The crowd divided. On one side, cheers for the host. On the other, silence, curiosity, a waiting breath for something unexpected. And then she stepped out. Karoline wore a striking red suit. Her gold cross shimmered beneath the spotlight. No teleprompter, no cue cards, just truth and the will to speak it. Jimmy began with his usual grin, lobbing jokes about Trump and the administration. The crowd laughed, but Karoline didn't. She waited, calm, poised. "Welcome to the show," Kimmel said. "Hope you brought a map to navigate these questions." Without missing a beat, Karoline smiled. "Thanks, Jimmy. I brought something better. Facts." The crowd hushed. A few murmurs. Then Jimmy fired the first real shot. "You defend a man who's called dangerous, chaotic. Aren't you just here cleaning up after his messes?" Karoline leaned in. "I'm here because while others laugh, real Americans are working 2 jobs to stay afloat. Because while you joke about the economy, 2.3 million manufacturing jobs were created under this administration. I'm not cleaning up, I'm speaking up." A ripple through the audience. Kimmel tried again. "What about inflation? Prices rising? That's leadership?" "Inflation is global, Jimmy. But under Trump, we brought back energy independence, renegotiated trade deals, and stood up to countries that undermined us. I understand you need laughs, but the American people, they need leaders." Then came the video. A clip of Karoline at the White House podium, edited to make her look flustered. The crowd laughed. "Is that the clarity you bring to the country?" Jimmy smirked. Karoline didn't flinch. "You found 5 seconds of me pausing, but not the 10 minutes of data that followed. You want a punchline. I came with purpose." She turned to the crowd. "Before tariffs, 60% of our steel came from China. Now, domestic steel production is up 25%. 300,000 new energy jobs. That's not a joke. That's what fighting for your country looks like." Jimmy smiled thinly, but the applause drowned it out. "If you don't like what I say," Karoline continued, "ask yourself why it scares you." The room exploded, not with outrage, but with realization. She wasn't playing by their script. She was tearing it up. Kimmel tried one final blow. "You defend someone who the world laughs at. Doesn't that make you tired?" Karoline stood. "The world laughed when we lost jobs and bowed to foreign interests. They stopped laughing when Trump stood tall. I'm not tired of defending results. I'm tired of watching people suffer while elites laugh from stages like this." She paused, then removed her mic. "I came here to speak truth, but I don't need your stage to do it." She turned to the crowd. "Don't let entertainers decide what you believe. Listen, think, and never settle for a punchline when you deserve the truth." She walked off, unbothered, unshaken. The audience roared. Online, clips of her calm takedown trended for days. Even people who didn't support Trump wrote, "She didn't yell. She didn't insult. She told the truth." Jimmy Kimmel tried to laugh it off, But deep down, America saw what had happened. Karoline Leavitt didn't just win a debate. She walked into a lion's den, faced the cameras, and reminded a nation that even in the noisiest rooms, courage speaks louder than comedy. And truth never needs a laugh track. Jimmy tried to steer the interview back to familiar ground. He glanced at his cue cards, then back at the camera. Karoline, you've got passion, I'll give you that. But surely even you have to admit, some of these numbers you're throwing out, they sound good on paper, but people still feel like they're struggling. That's not a vibe thing. That's a reality thing. Karoline nodded slowly, not defensive, not rattled. Yes, Jimmy, people are struggling. And the reason they're struggling is because for too long, this town, this industry, has decided it's easier to talk about pain than to fix it. She sat up straighter, her voice lower but more potent now. You ask if I know how people feel? I was just in Pennsylvania with a widow who lost her husband to fentanyl, smuggled across a border your audience laughs about. She didn't need a joke. She needed someone to say her husband mattered. The audience stilled. Even Jimmy quieted. Karoline turned to the crowd. You all came here for laughs, and I respect that. But ask yourselves, when was the last time a punchline paid your electric bill? When was the last time a monologue kept your kids safe from drugs in their school bathroom? She looked back at Kimmel. This isn't about liking Trump. It's about whether anyone in Washington, and yes, Hollywood, is finally willing to fight for something other than applause. Then she softened just slightly. Jimmy, I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to speak to the person watching this show tonight who's thinking about selling their truck because they can't afford fuel. The senior choosing between medication and groceries. The mom praying that the border doesn't let another tragedy through. The camera panned across the audience. Many weren't laughing anymore. They were listening. Kimmel shifted in his chair. His posture slouched. The sparkle of satire in his eyes dimmed, replaced by something else. Discomfort, maybe, or respect. Okay, he said quietly. I think that's the most serious this show's gotten in months. Karoline didn't miss a beat. Maybe it's time. The crowd erupted, not in laughter, but in applause. She hadn't made them laugh. She made them feel. And in a room built for punchlines, that was the real disruption. And when comedy fails and truth walks in, right at this moment, the applause still echoed through the studio when Jimmy Kimmel, usually quick on his feet, found himself hesitating. For the first time that evening, he wasn't sure which line to throw next. Well, Karoline, or do you prefer Karoline with a K? He finally asked, attempting a light jab to break the tension. Karoline smiled gently. I prefer someone who came prepared. Laughter rose again, but this time it was with her, not at her. Jimmy tried to keep pace. Okay, prepared. Then tell me this. Do you actually believe President Trump tells the truth? Because that's a stretch, even for someone who calls tariffs job builders. Karoline didn't flinch. I believe he speaks more truth in 5 minutes than this town has in 5 years. A few gasps. Because while he might not sound polished to folks in makeup rooms and press pits, he's honest about what he believes. And more importantly, he delivers. Jimmy cut in. Delivers. He also delivered a lot of controversy. You say truth like it's a campaign slogan, but to a lot of Americans, that truth was chaos. Karoline leaned forward, eyes locked. No, Jimmy. Chaos is 8% inflation. Chaos is a border open wide enough for cartels to stroll through. Chaos is Americans held hostage while our press secretary dodges every question with, I don't have anything. Silence. Even Kimmel blinked. She didn't stop. I came here knowing I'd be mocked. I came knowing you'd play a clip or twist a soundbite. But I also came knowing that somewhere out there, a grandfather in Nevada is watching this and saying, Finally, someone said what I've been thinking. She turned to the audience. I'm not here for Twitter. I'm here for that man. The audience stirred. A woman in the second row stood and clapped slowly. Then others followed. Jimmy sat back. He didn't have a joke. And America was listening. Jimmy Kimmel wasn't used to losing control of his own stage. His show was his playground, his rules, his applause. But tonight the balance had shifted, and the crowd was no longer laughing at Karoline. They were applauding her. He tried to pivot back, a smile stretching tight across his face. All right. You win the sincerity round. But come on, Karoline. Let's not pretend your administration hasn't dodged plenty too. Karoline raised an eyebrow. Dodged? I take questions from 30 reporters every morning. No edits, no writer's room, no studio laugh track. The audience responded with another round of claps. Jimmy pressed on, his voice just a bit more strained. Then what about Trump's tweets? His rhetoric? His lawsuits? Karoline stood, her tone sharpened. His rhetoric didn't cost me $5 at the gas pump. Your policies did. His tweets didn't flood my neighborhood with fentanyl. Open borders did. She took a step closer to the front of the stage. You keep bringing up personality, Jimmy. I'm bringing up pain. And for every minute you try to distract from it, there's a grandmother in Indiana who's wondering if she can afford her medicine next week. Jimmy fell quiet. He tapped his pen against his desk. Lightly, repeatedly. The audience could hear it now. The discomfort, the shift. Karoline looked around the studio. You want a joke? Fine. But the country's tired, they're hurting, and they deserve more than your monologue. Silence. Jimmy exhaled, tried to laugh. You know, you're intense. You ever think about doing stand-up? Karoline tilted her head. Only if the truth stops being this hard to find. Boom. The crowd was on its feet. Jimmy was left sitting. And the show? The show was no longer his. It was the kind of moment that doesn't need fireworks or music to be remembered. The lights hadn't changed. The cameras kept rolling. But the tone, the energy was completely different now. The balance of power had shifted. Jimmy Kimmel, who built his career asking the questions and controlling the laughs, now sat beneath a spotlight that felt hotter than usual. Karoline Leavitt stood in front of him, not with rage or rehearsed indignation, but with a poise that felt more presidential than performative. You want to keep playing this game, Jimmy, she said softly, but the American people stopped laughing a long time ago. He tried to chuckle it off. You know, I thought this was supposed to be fun. Karoline's response was immediate. It was fun until the groceries doubled, until gas hit $5, until your neighbor lost his job. Her voice cut through the room like cold steel. Now it's just noise. The audience didn't clap. They didn't cheer. They listened. She walked toward the front of the stage, her heels clicking against the polished floor, each step echoing like a heartbeat. America isn't in a crisis of personality, Jimmy. It's in a crisis of courage. She turned to the crowd. And if the best this country can offer are comedians with cue cards and politicians with talking points, then we're in deeper trouble than any of you realize. A man in the back row wiped his eyes. An older woman with silver hair placed her hand over her heart. Karoline didn't stop. Do you know what it feels like to bury a husband because his VA benefits got caught in bureaucracy? Do you know what it means to hold your child in a hospital bed while insurance companies fight over paperwork? You don't. And I pray you never have to. Her voice quivered, but she didn't let it falter. But I have. I've seen it. And that's why I will not let the truth be mocked. Not here. Not tonight. Jimmy sat quietly gripping his pen. His once cheerful grin was gone. In its place, the solemn realization that he had invited a guest who hadn't come to be interviewed. She had come to remind America of something we'd almost forgotten: honor, service, sacrifice. Karoline reached for her microphone. The audience gasped. She pulled it off slowly. This mic, this stage, this show, they're just platforms. But real power? That's in truth. That's in action. That's in the mom who works 2 jobs so her kids can eat, the soldier who comes home and keeps fighting silently, the elderly man who stands at a grocery store calculating every item because his fixed income no longer covers what it used to. She looked directly into the camera. I came here because someone needed to say what they're afraid to. So I'll say it now. She paused, breathing in slowly. America's not broken, but our courage is bruised, our leadership is distracted, and our truth, it's being written by people who think applause is a substitute for integrity. A silence so deep you could hear a cough in the balcony. I came here to be heard, and I was. She handed the mic to a stunned technician and began walking toward the side curtain. Jimmy tried one last time. Wait, Karoline, I didn't mean to. She stopped, turned. You meant to entertain. I meant to serve. And with that, she walked off. No music played, no flashy graphics rolled, just her steps. Firm final, and the sound of the entire room. Standing. The ovation wasn't wild. It wasn't raucous. It was reverent. One by one, people stood, some with tears, some with hands over their hearts, others recording with trembling phones. Jimmy sat still. Defeated? Number? It was deeper than that. He looked humbled. And for the first time in years, the crowd wasn't clapping for him. Online, the video exploded. Karoline walks trended on every platform. Clips of her removing the mic circulated with soundtracks. Not dramatic, not overdone, just quiet truth. A TikTok of her saying, I meant to serve, hit 4 million views in an hour. Even critics couldn't deny it. She didn't shout, she didn't insult, she reminded. Fox News aired a full replay. Newsmax called it the moment Hollywood learned humility. Even moderate outlets published headlines like, the red suit that spoke louder than any monologue. MSNBC tried to spin it. CNN offered a panel to unpack the performance. But the viewers knew this wasn't performance. It was principle. A 27-year-old woman with no script, no spotlight of her own, just walked into a lion's den and left with the crowd. Not by force, but by truth. Back at the White House, staffers gathered around a screen. Some clapped, others cried. A senior aide whispered, she didn't just represent the administration tonight. She represented the soul of the American people. Karoline, meanwhile, didn't bask. She got into a car, called her husband, asked how their baby was doing. Because leadership isn't in what you say on TV. It's what you do when no one's looking. That night, millions slept differently because someone finally stood up. Not just on stage, but for them. And that someone's name was Karoline Leavitt. And now if this moment hits you, comment below with the part that stuck with you most. Share this with someone who needs hope in a time of noise. And subscribe for more stories of courage. Because the truth, it doesn't need a microphone, it just needs a moment. And Karoline delivered it.